Welcome everyone to this very important event. My name is Glenn Lazarus. I'm the leader of the Palmer United Party Senate team for Queensland. Today is an important day for Palmer United. When the day is over, another 5 seats will have official Palmer United candidates for the House of Representatives for the federal election in September. I'm confident that Palmer United Party will win them all. And why am I so confident? I've witnessed how Australians recognise there is a growing need for change. I've just returned from the nation's capital and there is an overwhelming recognition that Gillard and Abbott don't have the answers. Australians don't want the same, they want change. Only the Palmer United Party and our team will bring that change to Australia. I've also just returned from Melbourne and experienced the disappointment and lack of trust Australians have in their current politicians. People in Queensland, New South Wales and Victoria know when they're not being listened to, know when their living standards are dropping, know when taxes are rising, know when electricity prices are rising, and know when their disposable income is diminishing. Australians do not want the same, they want change. I'm a family man, my children were born and raised in Queensland, and I care about their future. My wife Tess and I are committed to Queensland. I will do whatever it takes to fight for the families that live in this state to have a better life, to benefit themselves from working hard and getting a fair go from government. Australia needs leadership. And that's why I've joined the Palmer United Party. That's why thousands of people across Australia have joined the Palmer United Party. That's why the Palmer United Party will stand in 150 seats in the House of Representatives. That's why I will lead the Queensland Senate team to victory. I now want to introduce to you Australia's inspiration, our federal leader and the next Prime Minister of Australia, Clive Palmer.
Well, thanks very much. Thanks very much, Glenn. It's great to be here. We had a wonderful morning this morning when we endorsed candidates for the seat of Rankin, seat of Moreton and the seat of Bowman. So it's really good to see the numbers coming up, and we're here today for a very important purpose, to endorse the candidate for the seat of Blair. But I'll just say a few words before we get on to that. It's been an overwhelming experience this week. We're now up to 3.2 million hits on our website, which is fantastic. Our membership at the moment has climbed above 2,500 members, and we've got over 8,000 members' applications waiting to be processed. So I think in 3 weeks we haven't done too bad. So it's good to be here today, because right across this country we're endorsing candidates to make a critical stand against Gillard and Abbott and the way this country's been run. It's time we made a change. We really got to get this country moving and get rid of the old school. It doesn't matter whether you vote for Julia Abbott or Tony Gillard, they're all the same. They all stand for the same things. That's what it's all about, making change. Later on this week, we'll be going to Townsville tomorrow and then to Rockhampton, endorsing another 4 candidates in Townsville for the seat of Herbert, Dawson, Kennedy and Leichhardt. And then we'll be going down to Rockhampton. I've got endorsed candidates to announce for the seats there. But more importantly, this is a critical week for us, because next week we'll announce our first candidate from Victoria in the seat of Latrobe. On Monday, that'll be very exciting, and our first candidate for New South Wales. By the end of the week, we'll have announced 10 new candidates for New South Wales and 10 new ones for Victoria. And we really know who'll be standing for us, and later on next month we'll be in Sydney and Melbourne doing mass endorsements for the rest of those states. So we've got a great time ahead of us, and you'll see some surprising people come out and vote for the party. But this is not my day, this is not why we're here. We're here to talk about Anthony Stanton in Blair, the sort of person he has, and someone who has experienced firsthand in his military service about what's been happening in this country and how it needs to be changed. He stood on the front lines for with the refugees and others, and he wants to stand up now with us because he thinks our policies are superior, as you'll see, and he can make a real contribution to Australia. So I'd like to introduce to you the official endorsed candidate for the seat of Blair, Anthony Stanton. Thanks very much.
Good afternoon, everybody. My warmest greetings to you all. My name is Anthony Stanton, and I am the Palmer United Party's candidate for the seat of Blair. I grew up on the land in Western New South Wales and first moved to the Blair electorate in 2001 with my wife and 4 children. We've grown to love the region, the rolling hills and breathtaking lakes of the Brisbane Valley and Queensland's favourite big country town, Ipswich. I'm absolutely thrilled that the Palmer United Party has selected me to represent it in Blair. Australia has a rich history of political activism, and this party was founded in the best traditions of the mavericks who have helped shape this nation. However, caring about Australians has been something that has recently been lacking from Australian politics. For too long, this has occurred, forcing Australians to turn their backs on federal government as increasingly irrelevant and out of touch with their daily lives. What we need is a government with common sense, with policies that families can relate to. Blair can make a difference. I know that you are already doing all that you can, but together we can really achieve something extraordinary, and that will start with changing the government of this nation. How long are Australians going to be forced to spend $5 billion a year on fear? How long will Gillard and Abbott feed the people smugglers with their policies that create misery? We have to close those camps. Save the money that we spend on the naval blockade of the Indian Ocean. Use the Navy for the purpose it was trained for, defence of this nation. The solution's pretty simple. We need to treat our boat arrivals the same way other countries treat their refugees. If you're a person in Indonesia right now, you can jump on a plane and fly to Brisbane, Sydney or Melbourne for about $400. Problem is, if you don't have a valid visa, you're not allowed to board the plane. So people pay $20,000 to a people smuggler, get on board a leaky boat, make the people smugglers rich, cost Australia $5 billion and cause untold social damage, including for servicemen and their families, separating husbands from wives and children from their parents. If we allow people to board a plane without a visa, it will then cost them $400, save us $5 billion. They'll have passports, so we'll know who they are, where they've come from, and from what country they've fled. They'll enter at our airports so we can have resources pre-positioned to efficiently process these people and give them a fair hearing and determine their claim. If they don't have a valid claim, we can repatriate them immediately from where they came. There's no separating of husbands from wives, no breaking up families, and no drain on the taxpayer. Now, my message to the people of Blair is that with these policies and more, the Palmer United Party and I will represent you. We'll be proud to serve you and take your common sense, your hopes, your dreams and your fears to Canberra. You will have a voice that's not gagged by opinion polls and focus groups. We'll speak our minds, your minds, and make your voices heard in Canberra. We believe in Australia, in all its diversity, yet with commonality of purpose. Everyone gets a fair go. We look after our mates. We give everything our best shot. We are proud of, and we will protect our friends, our families, and this nation. All we want is a fair go. Vote for Palmer United in Blair and for Glenn's team in the Senate. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Anthony. Thanks very much. What we'll do, we've got some press here, so we'll have a couple of questions, if you like, on the press conference. It might be easier with so many people here. Okay. Do we have any questions? Jason, have you got to ask?
Look, I guess the main thing, mate, is you mentioned that this new policy would not have any drain on the taxpayer at all. Have you worked out specifically how you would organise that so that there would be no cost at all to the taxpayer? It sounds like you still need to have bureaucrats and staff involved in the process.
Well, like they do in the United States. Anyone coming here at the moment who doesn't come via Indonesia is treated exactly the same way. They're given an interview by customs when they get in, seeing what claim they've got for citizenship or entry, if they've got a legal right to be here or an illegal right to be here. If they determine it's illegal, they're put back on the next plane and sent back to their part of destination. That applies all over the world, really. And I don't see why Australia should have a different policy. And basically, if we talked about the Gonski report, which really is a report card on the Prime Minister, Julia Gillard, her incompetence when she was Education Minister, but you look at the needs that need to be addressed there. They may cost $5 billion. It's much better to spend that on our children and on our infrastructure and the people living in this country than just wasting it and giving Australia a bad reputation. And the only people that get rich, really, are the people smugglers. They charge $20,000 for a passage here. They can only do that because people can't come here for $400. So I'm a great believer in economics. If I want to test whether I've got the right to enter Australia and I'm in Indonesia or another foreign country, I'd much rather pay $400 to test it than $20,000. And of course, the people smugglers make problems for us and our Navy, and a lot of people die. 455 people boarded a 45-foot boat and 155 people drowned in the Indian Ocean. We've all got children, and Anthony will tell you, and others will tell you that are standing for us, what it's like to be holding in your hands a 3-month-old baby having fits and convulsions because of this policy of Julia Gillard's and Tony Abbott's. So I'm a father, you've all got children, you can imagine what that's like. We don't want to have babies suffering, we don't want to separate people from their family. If they think they've got a legitimate right to be here, and some of them may have, they can come to Australia, they can have a fair hearing like any other country in the world, and if they do have a right, we can deal with that. If they don't, we can return them. But we don't want to hold people for 5 years in separate camps. That's not what this country was founded on, and that's not what most Australians agree on.
Professor Palmer, have you done any polling to see how you're travelling at the moment? I noticed the Galaxy poll yesterday. I don't think it mentioned the Palmer Party. Have you done any polling?
Yeah, we have done a bit, and I think our polling is pretty similar to what was across the nation, you mean, or in Queensland? Or?
Either or.
Well, across the nation, it's showing we've got about 30% the support of Australians at the moment on the polling that we've looked at. And I think that's pretty significant. It's pretty similar to the amount of support we had in the 9MSN poll, where 65,000 Australians decided they'd vote first preference for us. In Queensland, we think at the moment we've got about 40% of the vote and getting stronger. And of course, the policy of Julia Gillard and the policy of Tony Abbott is not to take issue with any policy of our party. And if they agree with those policies, why doesn't the Prime Minister implement them? It may be that she doesn't agree with having a debate with me. Maybe she is too frightened, Julia Gillard or Tony Abbott, to confront those things. I look forward to the day when at least they'll acknowledge us as Australians.
Well, speaking of the Prime Minister, this morning she's announced banning live sporting odds on live sports broadcasts. Is that something your party would support?
Well, we'd have to look at that in great details. We don't think that's the main issue for the country at the moment. The main issue really is getting jobs for Australians and turning this country around from where it's been. And of course, it's not Julia Gillard that's announced anything. It's a focus group or advisors who've given her the note to say what she's allowed to say today. If you ask Julia Gillard where she'll be in a week's time, she wouldn't know. She'd have to get her staff to tell her, because she won't decide. If you ask me where I'll be in a week's time, I'll tell you.
Off the top of your head, though, what do you think about banning live sports betting on?
Well, personally, for me as a person, not as a party, I think we've got to concentrate on the things that are good in Australia and minimise the things that are having a negative impact in our community. And that's just looking at the whole issue right across the board. And I think not enough time's been done to do that, and we need to encourage people to do better, to do more, better things. Our candidate for Moreton, I think it was today, announced our policy where we favour taxing people 50% of the current rates for their second jobs. And that's the sort of thing. We've got to create incentive. We've really got to release more money to the community, create more wealth and create more activity. The current policies of the current government and the opposition is really to screw us right down, close our schools, close our hospitals, sell off things and budget, you know. I never made any money. I started out with nothing. If I didn't work hard, if I didn't have incentive, if I didn't try, I wouldn't have got anywhere. So that doesn't work. You just can't sit there like a stone and do nothing.
Mr. Palmer,
Yeah.
you've announced that there's going to be some more announcements on candidates in the coming week.
They will.
We've already had some high-profile announcements like Mr. Lazarus, who already has a high
Yeah.
How much is that going to play a role in the people who are announced over the next week or so?
Well, we've got some people with much higher profile than Glenn. Sorry about that. Announcing, but we're saving them a little bit later because we don't want to give you guys all the news in one day. Otherwise, you won't come back. So you've got to have some press strategy. But I'm sure there'll be much higher people with as high a profile as Glenn. Certainly, we won't have anyone with a stronger character than Glenn Lazarus. Someone that stands firm for what he believes in and is happy to serve the community. He's a great example of that. But we'll have other people standing here who are very strong supporters of the party and well known in their states.
But is that something you look at, someone who has a high public profile, so the average punter sees them and recognises their face and thinks, well, I'll vote for the Palmer party now?
What we look at is the content of their character and what they believe in what we stand for. A political party is more than a name. It's about what you believe in and what you're standing for. And that's much more important than whether you call it such and such a party or this party or any party, really. And this is what this is about. It's not about me being Prime Minister. I'll have to downgrade my house and do things like if I win the job. But it's about what we can do as Australians, because it doesn't matter what minority group you belong to, and I'm in a very small minority group of billionaires that gets discriminated against every day in the media, right? According to Wayne Swan, anyway. It doesn't really matter about that. It matters about what we stand for as a country, as citizens of this country, and under the law, each of us should have the same rights. I note with horror the paid parental leave scheme that Tony Abbott wants to introduce, where Liberal women will get $150,000 a year to have a baby, and the average Australian will get something less than $50,000 a year to have a baby.
Well, what do you mean by Liberal women?
Well, I mean, if you look at the profile of the Liberal Party, it's made up of a lot of very wealthy, high-profile lawyers, tend to vote higher in proportion for the Liberal Party than they do for the Labor Party.
But under the policy, all women within a certain tax bracket would be entitled to those.
Well, I don't think the tax bracket determines your right. I think it's a question of your right of birth. We see in the American Constitution that all men, all women, are created equal. And in Tony Abbott's world, you're only equal if your bank balance is pretty high. And that's not what government's about. It's not what the country's about. All Australians, whether they're rich or poor, should be entitled to fairness and equal treatment under the law. We may all disagree. If we have a political disagreement with one group of Australians, doesn't mean they're bad people. Doesn't mean they don't have their rights protected under the law, and we should look after them. And Julia Gillard, Tony Abbott, their families have all got a right to a good life in this country, and they're all Australians. And I applaud Gillard and Abbott for standing for the country. I just don't agree with what they're doing. I just don't agree with what they're saying. I just don't agree how they're destroying our society. And I think we can do better. The big criticism about me is that we offer choice to the Australian people, that there's two parties at the moment and they should have a chance to do better. I think we can do better, this country. I think we can create more wealth, create more jobs. We can live up to the promise of our founding fathers and make this nation better than we are. And I'm only standing for Prime Minister because I think I can contribute. But it's not up for me to judge. And if I succeed or if I fail is not the critical element for me in my personal persona. I love my wife, my family and my kids. That's what matters to me as an Australian. I'm sure it matters to all of us. But whatever happens, I think the people of Australia have got the right to choose. Many people don't think that's the case. We talk about competition, and all our politicians tell us that we need competition, but they don't want competition in politics. They're scared of it. They're frightened of it. You know why that is? Because they might lose. And in this next election, they will lose. I will be the Prime Minister of this country. We will win a majority of seats, regardless of what anybody says. It's not a question of whether we're registered. It's not a question of our name. It's not a question of whether we're on the ballot paper, because the people of Australia, as the 3 million hits on our website demonstrate, will seek out who our candidates. And when you've got people of the calibre of Anthony standing with us and the candidates that we had this morning, we can't help but realise that we've got to realise our goal. Is there any more questions?
Could you tell us some more about your candidates in other Brisbane seats? Bill Rogan, John Wayne, Graham Ray?
Well, there's a press release out there which gives them the background. I went through it this morning. We had a press conference out there running through the background, so Andrew Cook will be able to give you that in great detail. But all of them are Australians that have one thing in common. They all agree that the current lot we've got in Canberra, Tony Gillard and Julia Abbott, are extremely boring, right? And we need to get this country going. If things are tough, we can still smile, we can still look ahead with a positive future, and we can do better than we are. So I think all of us are saying that the overwhelming thing, the question at this morning's endorsement was the question of lobbyists. that all political parties are really controlled by lobbyists, where a lobby company has a former Labor minister or a former Liberal minister, and if you're a business guy like I am and you're going off them $1 million, doesn't matter who's in government, they'll get it done for you. And that's wrong. The people are disenfranchised. We think that's a bad way to go. So we think we should get rid of the lobbyists. And one of the policies that we have in our party is that a lobbyist cannot hold a position in the party of any note, of any official position, or can they stand for Parliament. And we think that's a good thing.
You say the two major parties are boring. Is it something you aim to do, bring some excitement into politics?
Well, life's exciting for me. I hope it's exciting for you. But the point about it is that's what we want. We want excitement. We want to get it's pretty exciting to be an Australian, to live under the Southern Cross, to get up every morning to smell the wattle, to go out in the sunshine. And if you talk to journalists, even journalists that are not too positive, they love being Australian journalists, you know? Australian journalists have got an independence about them, an inquiring thing. Frank Sinatra didn't like them, but I love them, because what they're trying to do is protect the right to know. Journalists stand as the last sentry of the gate of freedom in this country. We've seen them demolished by the Gillard Media Act, which tries to control the very thoughts of Australians. We've seen them diminish in numbers because the newspapers continually sack and abuse them. It's time we realised how important they are, because they are the last sentries of freedom and they protect our knowledge. You know, governments may come and go, but ideas go on forever. And we as Australians in this generation, at this time, want to make sure that we take a historic stand for the ideas that have kept this nation in good stead in the years gone by. We've just had Anzac Day. You know, we celebrated the Australians that fought and died for Australia. In my family, I lost my great uncle in the First World War. I lost 5 of us fought in New Guinea in World War II. 2 of my nephews are still recovering from the Vietnamese War, and my other nephew, Squadron Leader Martin Brewster, led Interfed logistics people for the Australian Air Force in Timor. All of those people have done a lot more than I could ever do in serving the nation. But they didn't, as Anzacs, they didn't go overseas as members of the Liberal Party or members of the Labor Party. They went as Australians. And we've got to realise as Australians that 95% of the things that we believe we all agree on. It's only the 5% of things that differentiate. And that's okay, because that's what diversity means in a society. We want debate. We want freedom of speech. But let's concentrate on the 95% of things we agree on. Let's unite the country, regardless of the 5% of things we may disagree on, and get those things right. If we do, we'll have a much better country. All right, thanks everybody for coming. And